Why, hello everyone, welcome back to the Rambles of a Colourful Nerd. This time, I'm going to be covering a topic that's probably going to actually take a while. I'm going to cover the Fate series. It's obviously the anime series, which originally started as a visual novel. Full disclosure, I have basically read, watched, played almost everything. The only thing I really haven't done is manually play Holotrexia myself, and I haven't played Extella Link, but that's because it hasn't come out over here yet. Neither have I actually really watched that much of Extella Link either, so I don't actually know story. I want to cover it because it's an extensive topic. It's long, it's tedious, and I kind of want to go over it because I was watching someone recently, and they were covering why Japanese animation why their action series aren't usually as good as their slice of life shows, all that kind of good stuff. Especially since a lot of the slice of life shows are very funny. I'll be making probably something a little later on that's about that. I just don't feel it's the right time yet to cover it. The Fate series is varied. It can be very good, very bad, very weird, very funny. It's a large mess. Type Moon is simply a company that really does random stuff, and you never know if they're going to be really good, really bad. You have no idea what they say. I was first introduced to Fate Stay Night through Fate Zero, which wasn't the best opening. Hopefully, this podcast will open people a little bit more and actually get them to watch it. The first thing, I will blatantly say it, the choreography is terrible. Even though a lot of the movement, it's not as, it's a lot more fluid than other shows, stuff like that. But that's only in Fate Zero and Fate Unlimited Works and Heaven's Feel because they have an exceptionally high budget. Ufotable is one of the few animation companies that gets a large budget for their series. You could tell a lot of their backgrounds look gorgeous. Their character designs are very nice. They're fluid with animation and stuff like this. While if we go to the contrast of Fate Apocrypha, it is far more classic anime style action where it looks nice, but it doesn't really have any substance to it. Big lasers hitting big lasers. That's the easiest way to describe it. Though sometimes it is actually really cool. There's actually one fight scene that I'll say is actually really nice and does fit the theme very nicely. So we'll begin with Fate Zero. This is only because Fate Zero is a good starting ground. Even though it is probably one of the worst series out of all of them. Depends on your personality take. I will say it's fairly good. That's my personal take on it. However, I will legitimately say it is not the best Fate at all, by any of the mean. This is likely because of it simply being too dark for its own good. Most Fate things, including the darker ones, which would be Fate Apocrypha, and technically the original Fate prototype, where they're more grim, it has a usual aura of light to it where you can enjoy it. It's fun. Fate Zero sometimes is just not enjoyable. It's just too dark for its own good. There's a few episodes. Episode 10, which is about Rin, is actually rather fun. Even though it's dark and grim, it has its own sense of comedy to it, and you can get really into it. A lot of the first season of Fate Zero is like that. It has some form of enjoyment and determination to try and get you to like it, even though it's dark. Most of it is original content, so you don't really need to watch any of the other Fate to really understand it, and it gives you a nice background, especially since the Fate story adaptation for Fate Stay Night is exceptionally terrible. This is due to multiple factors, but the main one is simply they wanted to tell a different story, and then they decided to do it anyway. Fate Zero is a good starting point. It has a lot of interesting characters. It gives you some basis to it. I'm not really going to go over story in this podcast. I'm simply going to go over why I like something, why I don't. I should probably have mentioned that first. However, I will blatantly say it that Kiritsugu is voiced by Crom and Ryoma, and Shigure. It just makes me happy because he's voiced by Matt Mercer, and Matt Mercer does such good work on literally everything he's in that I'm literally just going to say, good job. Like he actually does a lot more anime and video games you might think, but he does so many good things. We're just going to go, this guy. I like this guy. So if you want someone who you know has a good voice, I would recommend watching the English dub, actually. I usually watch shows based on specific factors. I will legitimately say Fate Zero is better in English than in Japanese. This is mostly due to one of the characters, Waver Velvet. He doesn't actually know any Japanese. That's an official statement. He actually doesn't know any. So, and he's English, so it makes more sense, especially since most of the characters are from out of town, make more sense if they know English. That's simply personal opinion. That and some of the lines don't translate very well into English, while the English ones they did fit the style very well, especially some of the voices. For example, the voice of Iriasville is exceptional. And of course, Kirei Kotomine. I don't know why, but as you may know, on my other channel, I played God Eater for the original God Eater completely via stream. Fun thing, Kirei Kotomine had two voice actors. One in the Dean adaptation, which as I said was terrible, and its respective movie, which tried to condense an entire story arc into 2 hours. Yeah, that was a good idea. And then, so basically he was terrible. And then the one he was here. The fun thing is that the voice actor for Kirei, basically in the Dean adaptation, is the same one that voiced Director Schicksal in the first God Eater game. But in the God Eater anime, the Kirei from this one voiced that one. It is just kind of like, oh, so the same people who voiced Kirei voiced him. So he always voices assholes then? Basically. So it's very interesting, especially since you get perspective on some of the servants this time, rather than it just being, they're servants. Oh, be in awe. Now, the main reason why this one, I believe, was handed off to Ufotable was simply because the 2010 Unlimited Works film was terrible. So this one was handed off so that they could do, so Ufotable could do, because they did a set of Tsukihime movies, not Tsukihime, one of their other works, they did a set of movies of them. They did that, and then they went, oh, we like this animation, so they decided to do Fate Zero. Then they did Fate Unlimited Works. I'll go over Fate Stay Night as a whole after I go over the other content, because I think Fate Stay Night deserves its own section of this podcast. The next one we're going to talk about is Fate Apocrypha. Apocrypha, it really tried. It's good, but it was not the best by any means. It has some interesting context. For example, it's set in an alternate world, so you don't technically need to watch anything of the other Fate to understand what the hell it is. The main protagonist is actually rather enjoyable. Ruler has some of those comedic moments in the entire franchise, which is amazing, but most of the other characters are fairly flat. The only thing that people really draw from Fate Apocrypha is Astolfo, and the only reason why is because he's a trap, and that's about it. Fairly straightforward. There is two. Basically, the whole idea is that if the Holy Grail, uncorrupted, basically fell into one person's hands and they managed to summon 7 servants, a secret function would activate, which would allow it. So basically, instead of them just basically saying, "Oh, we just kill all 7 servants," they then have 7 more servants summoned on a different side who would then fight them in a grand Holy Grail war, which is a fairly interesting concept and actually kind of worked. What didn't work is the fact that it's very obvious who the villain is, and it was like, well, rip, I know who the guy's the villain now. And it's exceptionally straightforward. I will legitimately give credit, though, that most of the servants are fairly interesting. That and using Mordred was inspired, actually. I will very much say Saber of Red is hilarious. What would happen if you took Saber, made them chaotic, have a whole bunch of ego, put them in a blender, hit blend, and you basically got Mordred. Most of the other servants are not incredibly interesting. I'll say Assassin of Red is interesting because she's basically what if you took Caster and Assassin and molded them together. But all that means is basically she's a broken servant, and she just simply she basically kills everything in her way. That's about it. It just kind of feels like she's overpowered for no good reason. There's only one servant that deserves that, and that's Gilgamesh. But that's because he's a fucking plot device. There go my one swear. Other than that, it's not really overly draft or anything. It's fairly interesting. If you want to go watch it, go right ahead. A lot of the action isn't very interesting. A lot of the other things are pretty interesting, especially the one-on-one fights are pretty good. But once they get to like grand stages or something, it gets really silly really, really fast. And they really try to draw you in with the action. Just that's not really the focus of the show, but they really try it, especially since the last half is basically just action. It just kind of feels like it's oversaturated at that point. Oh, like it's a decent show, so if you're into Fate, it's a good story to go on. Another one that I'm going to touch on is Fate Extra and its subsequent games. Fate Extra is a franchise that's once again another alternate world. However, it actually has a franchise to it. Rather than Apocrypha simply ending, it actually has 4 different games, and an anime adaptation, which I'm going to get to last. The original Fate Extra game is basically, it's a visual novel with RPG elements. Fairly straightforward. It was actually translated into English. Now, to be fair, there's technically a way too many translation errors for my liking, but it's a good enough translation where I will simply play it because it's the only one there, and I don't really care too much, and I know what they're going for, so it's not too big of a deal. The only reason why something else that I'm going to state wasn't there, basically, Fate Extra shares most of its events with Fate Stay Night, including the Fuyuki Holy Grail War, specifically the 5th Grail War. However, by about 2030, there's no more magic. So, at this point, nothing really majorly happens. Well, not anything super serious. The whole game takes place in a school, and your whole job is basically, because you know who your master you're going to be fighting it against, is to level up your servant, get information about your opponent, and further the story. That's literally the whole game. I may stream it at some point, simply because I have it. The game is... it's okay. It's available for the PSP. If you have a PSP randomly lying around and you want a decent visual novel with 3 different routes... well, 6 different routes, technically, because there's 3 servants and then 2, like, a branching path of 2, so technically 6 different things. You could totally go for it. Most of the plot's pretty straightforward. Your character is a silent protagonist that's silent on purpose. It's fairly interesting. You have a Saber, Archer, and Caster class servant. Saber is Nero Augustus. Basically, take Gilgamesh, make them into a Saber class servant, make them female. Boom, that's Saber. You have Archer, the classic heroic spirit Emiya. However, he goes by Nameless in this case because he's slightly different. And then Caster is basically the equivalent of Fox Girl, who breaks the 4th wall every 5 minutes. Rin has has a different Rin. There's a whole bunch of other characters that are new. Some aren't new. It's very interesting. I personally would recommend you go play through it once or go see someone play through it once. It's fairly good. It's not the best by any means, but it kind of shows how storytelling can be really good and very interesting. One of the other games, which is kind of like something else I'm going to be talking about, which is called the Heavensfield route. Warning, by the time I get to the Heavensfield route, I'm actually going to be talking about spoilers, so that's just a heads up. I will give another warning before I start doing it. Fate Extra CCC, or Triple C, I'm not sure how you pronounced it, was only released in Japan. They were thinking of releasing it, I think, over here, but because of the low sales of Extra, they decided not to. It is similar to Extra in the aspect that it is basically divided into different chapters and you basically keep going. However, it is very much meant to be what if a game that I'll be getting to after Fate Stay Night, Fate Hollow Atraxia, basically would be if it was crossed with Heavensfield. And I haven't really seen too much of this because the fan translation is still in progress. So I can't actually even really read it yet because the fan translation, I think, is about... I think they said it was about 35% done. I believe most of the translation was done. They needed to program it in, I think was really what was the big thing, because the game itself is long-ish. Fate Extra, most of the characters are back, but it's done from a silly perspective, and it's just kind of meant to be silly. Fairly straightforward. Now, it has a manga. You can go look that up. It's called Fate Extra CCC Foxtail. I have no idea really if it's good or not. I haven't read it. It's the one thing I just haven't read because I haven't really felt like reading it. But it's fairly interesting. I want to go over Extella. Now, Fate Extella and Fate Extella Link, its sequel, are basically what would happen if instead of an RPG, you took like Dynasty Warriors and threw it in with Fate. And I will legitimately say it is amazing. The game is long, like legitimately, I own it, and it's really long. I will blatantly say it once again, it's long. However, it is done by the same company that did Extra, Last Encore, and all this, which is very nice. If you wish to pick it, you can pick it up on Steam, PlayStation 4, PlayStation Vita, and you can also pick it up on the Switch. For some reason, it doesn't want Microsoft to have it. Don't really know why. However, it takes place in a world where all the events of both Fate Extra and Fate Extra CCC happened. So it's like a mesh of all of them. Basically, what if all the routes happened at once? So some characters have remnants of you and stuff like this, and it's actually rather interesting to see certain people's reactions, especially a certain servant who will be going into more detail, being Gilgamesh. You can summon him in Fate Extra CCC as your servant, should you wish. And once I get into him, because I'll be going to the characters of Fate Stay Night, because it's the big boy out of all of them. It is very interesting. There basically is there's uniqueness to it. There's 16 servants, and there are 4 main stories. So that means there's 12 side stories for you to do, and one of them's a hidden one featuring our good old Saber in Blue, Artoria Pendragon. The gameplay is very interesting. When I first saw it release, I was going, what the frick is this? And then I decided, I want to go see it more. And then I decided to actually play it, and man, is it good. Even its opening, which you can actually go watch, is amazing. I love it. It's my favorite opening out of any Fate thing, just because it just ingrained in my mind. It's amazing. The problem is actually viewing it in game is a fucking pain. Extella Link, I don't know nearly as much about this. The only thing I do know is that all 16 servants originally are in it, came back, and they have a good amount of different servants just being thrown in. Some from the original Fate Extra, some from Fate Zero, like Lancelot, he's thrown in, and a few random ones from Fate Grand Order. So you got some good, you got a good mesh. They changed some of the gameplay around, but most of it's pretty similar. Apparently, it's actually really good. I should probably check it. I'll even just check it right now so that we can just get it down, see what kind of ranking it is. Yep. Extella Link. Sure, we'll go. We'll see what it. If you want to pick up Fate Extella Link, apparently it will come out in the United States and Europe in winter, while a worldwide release is yet to be announced. So how well is this thing? Is it well reviewed? Yeah, it's actually pretty well reviewed. So if you want to pick it up, once it comes out, go for it. I will actually completely recommend the translation. The translation is amazing. It's spot on. I can't believe how accurate they made it. And still keep it like grammar and everything correct. Like, it's amazing on how well the translation was. This is probably because it was technically done in-house by Marvelous, so give them credit where it's due. The original Fate Extella, if they keep that quality up with Fate Extella Link, I'm sure the story will be fairly good and interesting, and all the characters will be good. Now we get to the black horse in the room. Fate Extra Last Encore. Oh boy. I'm going to read a statement from Kinloko Nas. He's the creator of the Fate series. He also was the one who wrote the scenario for Fate Extra, Fate Extella, and Fate Extella Link. Through Last Encore, I tried to make something that felt different, whether you know the premise. For the people who watch this anime as their first Extra experience, I want this to be a starting point where they become interested in the original game and the comics, the Foxtail. For the people who are familiar with the original game, I want them to go, what? At the differences. So people can have fun playing Extra after watching the anime, and people can have fun watching the anime after playing the game. We could make something that can be enjoyed both ways. I would legitimately say it. This show is not friendly to newcomers. He said it was. After watching it, I originally watched it, and I was going, this story is stupid. Not because it's bad, it was just silly. Now, when I rewatched it, I realized, oh wait, there's a whole bunch of moments that make a whole bunch of sense within the Fate Extra context. But that's only because I realized their context after playing a game. That's the problem. I shouldn't need to do that. Probably though, the best episodes are episodes 1 through 3. They're just entertaining as all hell. Mostly because Shinji's in it. But that's because Shinji's in it, and that's a little bit it. I really wish I could like this show more, but it is most definitely probably the worst anime to come out of the Fate franchise. It's even worse than the Fate Stay Night animation, like the original adaptation. Like, it was blatantly horrendous to sit through. It wasn't the worst show ever made or anything, but it was just hard to sit through. The only enjoyable character was Saber. Her master was boring and dull. Even though they're meant to be boring and dull, they were way too boring and dull. My favorite moment is when the other version of them shows up and totally just steals the show because they actually have emotion. And a whole bunch of other things like that. So it's like, I really wish it's this type of show that I wish I could like, but I can't. Oh well. Now we get to the weird one, Fate Khaled Liner. This one, is most definitely made for people who like comedy. It is very heavily inspired off of like 3 or 4 different Magical Girl series put together. Basically, it's what would happen if Elia was a normal girl who got magic and shenanigans ensue, basically. So it's okay, fairly basic story, fairly basic cliche. They drive the cliche to move forward. That's the whole point of the show. Take the cliche, move the plot forward. That's literally their whole point. I will blatantly say it is that Fake Colored Liner is actually really it's really interesting, but man, is it funny. It has some really funny moments. It isn't really it. If you want to watch a show for like to be a perv and stuff like that, or an ecchi or something like that, it isn't one. It has very, very few moments that are like, oh, we're going to push it in your face. I could technically tailor it towards Magical Girl Leo Kandanoha A's, where they kind of ditch a lot of the fan surfacey elements. There's a bit of it in it, but they try and ditch most of it in case for actual storytelling, actual comedy, actual drama, yada, yada, yada. With Colored Liner, I just want to I'm going to make a few statements about it. Mostly because I haven't really watched it recently. The last time I watched it was when the movie came out. And I legitimately say that movie was actually really fun. Probably the most fun I had with a Fate movie in a while. Even though I did enjoy one of the other movies. It basically... It takes a lot from Fate. It's very much clearly, though, you kind of need to watch a bit of Fate to get a lot of the jokes. Well, the starting jokes anyway. By the time you get to about the second season, where a lot of people, it kind of falls flat a little bit. More the third season, where that's where the ecchi things happen, but episode 6, they kind of just shove it out. It becomes very much kind of set in stone. There is a bit of problems with it, mostly because it is very cliche and very straightforward. Though to be fair, probably it's dry, try because it's 3 and dry. I would legitimately state that probably my there's some of my favorite bits from dry, doesn't really matter because they don't actually. It's literally 3 rye, so that's why I'm going to say it's dry. It's just it's funny. I don't know why. It's just funny. Pretty sure that wasn't intended to be nearly this funny, but it worked. I like it. It seems great. Now, that's basically all I can really say about Prisma Ilia, other than the fact that it has a movie. It's called Fake Colored Liner, Prisma Ilia Oath of Snow, which is fairly interesting. So it doesn't really have anything else. There's a new anime coming out at some point. I've absolutely no idea when, though, because the Twitter account which announced it has been dead, basically, for like a few months. So I don't really know. That's more or less all the Fate content. I want to quickly go over Tsukihime. Just as a night, because I'm going to make reference to it in something after Fate Stay Night and Fate Hollow Traxia. Tsukihime was one of the first works done by Tecmo. It was, once again, a visual novel that involved multiple characters, multiple routes, yada yada yada. I simply want to make reference to it because I will likely make reference to it when I talk about something, so you'll know what I mean by saying Tsukihime. Okay, now that we know what Tsukihime is, being a visual novel, having characters, yada yada yada, I can talk about the big boy, Fate Stay Night. Fate Stay Night is about a 50-hour visual novel. There's 3 routes. It is obnoxiously long. It's a good read, though. It was it's very simple. Basically, you play a mage who really isn't that much of a mage, and he gets sucked into what is known as the Holy Grail War, specifically the 5th Fuyuki Holy Grail War. Well, he gets drawn into it, and he summons the Saber class servant. There are a grand total of 7 servants: Saber, Archer, Lancer, Berserker, Rider, Assassin, and Caster. Every master has 3 command seals, which have been 3 command spells, which make up their command seal. Excuse me. Proper translation. Which basically, when activated, when one spell is activated, you can force your servant to do something to your bidding. Now, this can either be an order, or it could be something that actually assists both of you, or assists only the servant. One good example is having your servant teleport both you and them somewhere else. Boom, that's one good example. Another example that is actually used in Fate Apocrypha rather well is basically because let's say you're a master, but you're running low on mana, you can use a command seal mana, which is basically the basic equivalent of mana made physical, and basically use it to power up your servant, which is a fairly good use of it, but you only get 3. And as soon as you drop 3, you're no longer a master. Your servant has to find a new one. Pretty straightforward. The plot is about Shiro Emiya. I would go into depth about Shiro Emiya, but that would take up an entire podcast in and of itself. Well, Shiro's servant, Saber, is very straightforward. She is totally a Pendragon. Under the servant's service of Shiro, she is actually weakened because he can't give her proper mana. During the Fate storyline, she is the main heroine, meaning she's your love interest. And you talk to her the most out of any character. Rin Tosaka, depending on your route, can either be an asshole or your greatest companion. She is very, very interesting in the aspect that she's very ingrained within the Fate franchise. A lot of people like her. She looks nice. She has a type of attitude about her that basically makes her go, I don't really want to piss her off. Precisely. Because she's her last name's Tosaka, she's a part of the Tosaka family line, meaning she's a part of the 3 great families, meaning she was basically destined to be a master, yada yada yada. She's master of the heroic spirit, Archer. Archer is literally the biggest, he is cynical, he is sarcastic, and he's probably the most interesting character from Fate. However, the one thing I will blatantly tell you about Archer, this one's a spoiler, he is Shiro Emiya. He is the heroic spirit Emiya. I actually already said it once, I think, during this podcast. It's not really anything new to a lot of people, but that's just simply a heads up. It is revealed only really during Unlimited Works. It is revealed a little bit in Heaven's Veil. Berserker is the servant of Eliasfiel von Einsburn, the biological daughter of Eliasfiel von Einsburn and Kiritsuku Emiya, meaning she is the stepsister of Shiro Emiya. Berserker is her servant. Her servant is Hercules, who is way too broken for his own good. That's pretty straightforward. Sakura is a character that gets involved. Shinji is an asshole. Rider is the servant of Sakura, but later Shinji. She is Medusa. She is obnoxiously strange for a servant. A lot of her abilities are withheld because she's using Breaker Gorgon to hide her eyes. Caster. I don't really want to go into Caster because Caster is the heroic spirit Medea, Princess of Colchis. She's literally, as she states, she's a rule breaker. She summons Assassin, Kojiro Sasaki. However, Assassin doesn't even live in Heaven's Field. He dies within the first 5 minutes. Lancer. Oh, Lancer. You always die. Lancer is Q Hulan. He is probably the most interesting servant out of all of them because he is hilarious. That's probably the best category of being a servant, being hilarious. Then we get to spoiler territory, which I've already stated. Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh is the ancient king of Uruk in Mesopotamia. He's the first hero. You can put 2 and 2 together. He's very egotistical. He's very powerful. He literally has a sword that can cleave the world in 2. So, yeah, he's not to be trifled with. And he's the main antagonist for 2 of the arcs. During the 3rd arc, he has like 5 lines of dialogue and then is killed. To be fair, it makes sense, but because if they had him around, they wouldn't have to worry about this giant whole war because he would just kill the thing in the way. That's about it. During Heaven's Field, however, there's also another servant that is summoned, which is True Assassin. Zoken Mato uses the body of Assassin to summon the actual Assassin servant that was supposed to be around. Because Assassin can't technically be around, he's not supposed to exist. Other than that, I think I basically covered all the servants. Yeah, that's basically everything. I should probably go over the different routes, though. Yeah, I'll go over the 3 different routes. The Fate route is your Sterning route. Basically, it's the first one you usually do. If you have the official Japanese version for PS Vita, PlayStation 2, or PC, the very original, the 2004 release, you are forced to do the Fate route first. You have no choice. You will do the Fate route first. That's the only route you can do. Enjoy it. Basically, it's fairly interesting. It's a fairly paint-by-numbers story. You summon a servant, you start doing shit, you start making plans. Saber becomes your love interest, you fall in love with her. Gilgamesh doesn't like you, and there's a shit ton of bad ends, and all the bad ends are hilarious as all hell because they're very obvious in the Fate route. On the Bladeworks, on the other hand, this one is actually nasty. During this one, Rin acts as a kind of mini antagonist for a bit, rather than being someone who's supporting, even though she is actually the heroine of this storyline. Unlimited Blade Works is the set of events that could possibly make Archer, but they don't. And it basically explains who Archer is. That's basically the whole point of the route. It's usually universally agreed that Unlimited Blade Works is the best route out of all of them. It has not many twists, it's a few, but it is very interesting. A lot of them are basic and straightforward, but it's a very, very interesting story. And I'll blatantly say it's, once again, just like as unanimously agreed, it is also my favorite out of the 3. It has just the nice mix of comedy and drama. It has fairly good action to it. It kind of makes you want to keep reading or watching. It's just simply that one. Though Kirei does die a miserable death, and it makes me feel good. There's plenty of bad ends. And I do love there's literally one choice that's like so obvious you don't choose this, you're going to die. And it's like, well, rip. And I love it because it's amazing. I should state this. Ufotable actually made some changes. However, all the changes were technically approved by the creator and are classified as canon. Most of them are original scenes that haven't really changed too much. These are episode 15. Gilgamesh and Berserker are actually shown to start fighting. Ilya's past is shown so you understand her motives. Gilgamesh basically literally shows off him. Actually, no, that one is actually not a change. That one actually happened in the visual novel, actually. So, no, that one's actually not a change. That one's actually in the visual novel. I just realized that after reading it. Episode 23, The Wishes of Humanity are shown converging on the Grail. That one is most definitely not shown in the visual novel because they don't have the budget for that. The visual novel was made 2004. They don't have the budget. Gilgamesh explains to Shiro that going all out would be basically like it would sully him. Gilgamesh uses Ea against the giant arm manifested by the Grail, which is a good way to be because in it didn't make too much sense in the visual novel that he used Ea on Shiro. Didn't make too much sense. Using on the arm makes more sense. The Lesser Grail begins to manifest as a humanoid avenger. Rin uses the command seal to force Saber to destroy the Grail. Archer saves them because he's alive still. Saber resists. He manages to do it. Gilgamesh does probably the best one is basically in the visual novel he simply grabs Ea when he's in back in shape and he gets his arm cut off. In this one, it's shown he has a moment of hesitation before grabbing it, which shows if he grabbed it immediately rather than just hesitating and then grabbing it, he probably would have killed Shiro, which would have actually been which actually kind of shows him like realizing, oh wait, time to ditch pride, I need to kill him, which is rather nice. Pretty basic stuff. Episode 25 is completely and utterly anime original. I personally like it. It's okay. Though it does show some of the characters that are shown in later games that are very interesting. It also brings back Lord Elmaloy, aka Waver Velvet from Fate Zero, and I love his voice actor. I find him so lovey in my ears. So good. Oh wait, the big one. The one that's actually still being produced, basically. Heaven's Feel, the route is completely done. However, it's the final route you get access to. For good reason. It is the what if scenario. It's very dark and has a lot of horror elements to it, which kind of divide people on it. I do prefer it over Fate, but Unlimited Blade Works has the better lining. The one good thing, though, that Heaven Feel does is build suspense. It's very good at doing that. When Saber is killed very early on, and they keep her, like, you don't think, like, it's kind of think, oh, wait, is she dead? Like, because there's hints that she's not dead, but she is. So it's like, is she dead? And then at the very end, at the very end of the first movie, it is the first movie. I don't know if the first movie shows it, does it? No, the first movie actually does show it briefly that she's being turned into Saber Alter, a corrupted version of herself, and it actually gets very interesting. Saber Alter has no real emotion. She's a killing machine, and it's very much shown that she doesn't really care anymore. So basically in this, rather than focusing on the servants, because most of the servants are killed pretty quickly, the major servants at play here are Rider, True Assassin, Saber Alter, Archer for a little bit, and that's about it. So 3 out of 7. Which is kind of sad. It very much explains how masters act, how things work. It's the explanation. Not the explanation of how magic works. Explanation on why would probably be the better statement. Why does it act like this? Why? Rather than what. It's very in-depth, and it has probably it does have one break in comedy, and it's amazing. And I love it, because they make reference to it in Fate Caloudliner, actually. Basically, in Heaven's Feel, after Kyode loses Lancer, sad face, he goes to a curry, a Mopa Tofu restaurant, and just keeps guzzling it down, even though it's really spicy, and he loves it. It's just like, how are you eating this? And Shiro's going like, it's just amazing. And then in Heaven's Feel, he's selling it. And it's like, what? Like, what? This is amazing. I find it hilarious. It's a more Fate kind of joke. If you've read Heaven's Feel, you'll get it very quickly. If you haven't read Heaven's Feel, sorry, not really. It's a joke. But it's a nice break in the tension. Basically, Archer sacrifices himself against Berserker. He cuts his own arm off, gives it to Shiro after he loses his, and that's kind of the whole point. Something I should make reference to, in Fate Stay Night, Shiro develops in 3 different ways in all the different rounds. In Fate, he advances through normal training. So he becomes better as a mage, but nowhere near incredible. In Unlimited Blade Works, it's a combination of both physical training and him basically assimilating Archer at the same time. So he actually basically becomes a mini Archer. He's nowhere near as powerful as Archer by any means, but he is fairly competent. And it's shown that he actually can fight down a weakened Archer fairly efficiently. Well, once he starts moving forward anyway. In Heaven's Feel, you got none of that natural progression, because he's given Archer's arm, so he uses that for everything. However, he cannot use his reality marble, because if he does, he basically just instantly kills himself. And in Heaven's Feel, Shiro, every time he undoes the shackle, basically, on his arm, will slowly start dying. His body will his magic circuits will slowly start getting converted into archers, which will then basically create blades inside of himself, killing him. In the final fight of Heaven's Feel, major spoilers right here, Shiro basically got literally so dead he did not even know who he was. Kotomine shows up, who's also very dead at this point. He's not quite dead, but he's pretty close. And they basically have a dead man brawl, and it's amazing just because of how stupidly amazing it is. Really, there really isn't too much else other than that. Other than the fact that Heaven's Feel and Unlimited Blade Works have 2 different endings. Unlimited Blade Works has 2 endings, the true ending and the good ending. The true ending is the canonical ending. Fairly straightforward. The good ending has Saber staying put. Basically, she doesn't vanish. Boom. Okay. It's good ending. Everyone's still alive. In Heaven's Feel, it's the other way around. The normal ending is depressing as all fucking shit. The true ending is actually really happy, in a way, and it's shown that other things happen. Yeah. I should also actually kind of make I'll make a reference to the true ending, actually, because this is actually noted here. Because Shiro basically is rescued from the cavern, and his soul gets implanted by a puppet master. It's hinted at to be Aozaki Toko, a character from Kara no Kyokai, one of the first works of Type Moon. She's known as the 5th sorcerer. She is amazing. During Fate Stay Night, Shiro wins the Grail during Unlimited Works, Rin technically wins the Grail, and in Heaven's Feel, Sakura is the de facto winner. There is a lot of bad endings in Heaven's Feel, which, if you don't know where to say yes or no on certain things, it will end poorly. So the problem with Heaven's Feel, even though they're making movies of it, after watching the first movie, I would legitimately state they don't actually cover enough where if you don't know any of the Fate stuff, you're going to probably be lost. Especially a lot of the stuff that was covered in Fate, because a lot of the things that Unlimited Works aren't really covered from Fate. So it's like, if you watch Unlimited Works, you won't be lost or anything. You'll just be kind of questioning a few things. They do explain it, but it takes a bit of time before they actually do. In Fate, they actually just blatantly just tell you. So you'll know. So that's Fate's Day Night. Wow, that's been obnoxiously a bit of time. I apologize for the rattling. I want to now go over something else. I want to go Hollow Atraxia. This is going to be very brief. Hollow Atraxia is basically what would happen during a route where everyone but Kirei lived. And shenanigans ensue, basically. It's meant to be a comedy. You're not meant to take it seriously. It happens after an ending where, once again, it said everyone lives other than Kirei. Because Kirei has to die. No choice. He has to die. But there's a lot of reference to Heaven's Field, a lot of reference to Blade Works. There's almost no reference to Fate other than the fact that Saber is the major love interest. Other than that, it's a fairly interesting story. You can have some fun with it. Nothing too special. That was the entirety of Fate, covered in about 50 minutes. Yeah, this was not the easiest subject to cover. However, we do have one more thing to cover, actually. We covered all of Fate, but we haven't covered the crossover event, Carnival Phantasm. Now, this is something I actually recommend anyone to watch. You don't need to know any Fate or anything. It's just silly. Now, you're not going to get all the jokes unless you watch something related to Fate, but you might get a good chunk of them because a lot of them are just simply basic. Carnival Phantasm, it was created using Koha Ace, a parody thing they did as a base. Okay, pretty straightforward. However, it was done to celebrate their 10th anniversary. Therefore, it's actually kind of likely we're going to have another one coming soon, because if they do it for their 20th, we'll have another bit of seasons, which for me would be really cool. For other people, I don't really know. I'm not you. So there's a lot of running jokes in it, a lot of fun things, a lot of silly things that people can just simply enjoy. I simply find it entertaining. Now, it's been a very long podcast. I will see you all here next time, where I'll hopefully cover something a little shorter, but nowhere near as short as the previous podcast, which was like 10 minutes. Once again, I apologize for that being very short. I was a bit in a rush when I was making it, even though I'm recording this like a month afterwards. Wow. It was something that I really don't think ended great, but didn't end poorly. I'll see you all here next time. Bye.